Hi, guys. So, do you remember back in October when it was last year, actually, maybe February, that I was going to do an interview with my grandpa when he was out here in Montana visiting? And we just kind of never got it right. We tried a few times, but it just didn't work out. So, a few people have brought it back up to me about doing this interview with my grandpa. And I've been thinking about it for the last couple weeks, and I'm not going to rush this, you guys. We're going to start from when he was born and his first memory and his childhood and stuff like that. Try and do that in one video. And then, like the second when he went into the Navy and met my grandma and just throughout his life. So, again, guys, I don't want to rush it. It might take us 5 videos or so to get through it. So I'm going to title them Grandpa Roy. So you guys will know that we will continue this story with part 1, part 2, part 3. And so we got 90 years to go through here. But he's pretty excited to share his story. And, I'll just be asking him questions throughout. But he's going to just do most of the talking. So if you guys have been waiting for Grandpa Roy to tell a story, we're going to start right now. So Grandpa,
Yes.
can you tell them your name and where you were born and all that good stuff?
My nickname is Roy. My real name is Leroy. And I remember my first words because the day I was born, I said Ufta.
Ufta.
And if none of you are Norwegian, you don't know what that means. But when my last son was born, the first thing my wife said when she came out of it was Ufta.
Ufta. Yeah, that was Grandma's favorite word.
I remember in my life that I was 3 years old when I started Sunday school, and one of the things we done in Sunday school was on our birthday, if you were 3 years old, you bought 3 pennies. The next year, you go to 4 pennies. And that went into the collection, but I remember that. And then the one time that I remember is when my 4 brothers was teasing me because I was starting the first grade in school. And I remember that so well because when I got to school, my first grade teacher's name was Martha. And my mother had 7 girls in her family, but no boys. And Martha was the youngest, and she was my first grade school teacher. And when I come to school, I had a small set of leather shoes on, and they'd been passed all the way down from my 4 brothers. And she was so ashamed of me, she didn't say that, but she ordered from the Sears catalog a pair of shoes for me. And I'll never forget that time. And then, of course, each year, second grade was a little better, third grade was a little better, and so on. And I remember all 3 of my first, second, and third grade, because it was in the same room. Martha was my first teacher, and then there were 2 other teachers for the second and third year. Then I went to the 4th year in school, and I got pleurisy, and I got it quite bad, and so I missed about 3 months of school, so I was held over till the next year for my 4th grade. And as I moved up, there were more and more people in each one of my grades, but the day I graduated from high school, it was just me and 2 girls. And I started out as a freshman with 15. But the rural schools kind of went out of and went completely apart. So we all ended up in larger schools when we got older.
But you graduated from Caledonia, right?
Right.
Okay, so you were born in Caledonia, North Dakota.
Caledonia, North Dakota.
Okay. And so can you tell them, like, growing up on the farm, what you kids did? And you like to talk a lot about your mom and your grandma. So let's start there.
Well, my grandmother lived just a mile from me, and she's 100% Norwegian, and she made the best Norwegian food that you could possibly eat. Not that I'm bragging, but everybody in the country that ate it said the same thing. She used to make two different kinds of lefse. A
Lefse.
lot of people don't make any lefse. And one of her lefses was made with cream.
Well, let's tell them what lefse is, because there's not a whole lot of Norwegians out there.
Well, in Norway, back when our grandparents lived there, it was terrible, the conditions that lived there, because there was very little land and very hard to make a living. So one of the things that they made was lefse. That's made out of potatoes. There's a couple other ingredients in it, but the potatoes was funny. So that's one food that they made without costing them anything.
Yeah, and now we put like sugar. We usually have it like on holidays. Christmas is a big one. It's just butter and sugar, and we roll it up, and we always have it on our holidays, right?
Yes, and back then it was just Norwegians in Norway that had it, but right now today there ain't a store in the country that doesn't have lefse. It's that popular.
Yeah, and it's really expensive if you buy it in the store, because it's a lot of work to make.
Yes, that's right.
So your grandma used to make this all the time, right?
Yes.
And
my grandmother slept when she slept, but when she was awake, she worked continually. She never had a spare moment. She made the best food in the country, but she also, her husband died in 1918, and so she had to bring up them 7 girls by herself, and she had 80 acres of land, and that 80 acres was only 53 acres that was tillable. That, and she made butter from her milk cows and cream, and that's what she made a living on. And then the rent she got for that 53 acres of land.
So you never met your grandpa. He passed away before you were born?
1918.
Yeah, you were born in 18. Okay.
I was born in 1928.
So the girls were really young.
Yes, they were young. Martha was born in 1910. My mother was born in 1890. And the rest of them were born in between. And on the farm, they all had their jobs. 2 of them used to pick the weeds in the garden. A couple of them used to pick the mustard in the field. My grandmother done everything. She worked in a large garden. It was 2-acre gardens. She used to can it all. She never bought hardly any groceries except spices. And she used to scrub when they washed their clothes, they used to scrub it on the scrub board with a couple of tubs. But my mother,
Mary
was her name. That was her nickname. And the middle name is a Norwegian name. I can't really pronounce it, so we won't go into that. But my mother worked just as hard as my grandmother, because they were the only 2 that was there to do the work, so they done it. They never complained about it. My mother was the oldest, and she done all the sewing on the sewing machine for my aunts, her sisters. And so they had terrible, tough times. And when we complain today with all that we have, it almost makes you cry when you think back how hard they had to work. You can ask me some more questions now.
So your grandma's name was Charlotte, correct? And
What was that?
Your grandma, her name was Charlotte, and she never spoke English. She never learned how to speak English.
No,
but
she didn't. But then all of her daughters, except for Martha, all of her daughters spoke Norwegian when they started school. They had to learn their English in school.
So how did you communicate with Grandma when she wanted you to do something or you wanted to tell her something, since you didn't know Norwegian and she didn't know English? How would you communicate with her?
Well, if she was carrying water for the milk cows, and I went and offered to help it, she wouldn't say anything. She just handed me the pail. And that's how we communicated.
So she would just like point things here and there, and
that's right. If she was in the garden, she would pick the potato bugs off the potatoes, and then she'd feed the potato bugs to her chickens. She never wasted nothing.
She never wasted nothing.
That's right. But she made such a terrific food, and her clothes was all made, and they were always clean. And you never seen them 7 sisters fight whatsoever, right up until their older age. So she brought them up right.
So what's your first memory? Do you remember?
Yeah, when they were teasing me about starting school is what I remembered.
Okay.
And then in Sunday school, I remember bringing the pennies for your birthday.
Yeah, do you remember, so you've always been a Christian. Your mom always had you in church and Sunday school, and
we never missed Sunday school, and we never missed church. And we in the wintertime, we had a bobsled that we rode on, and it was 1.5 miles to church. On Sunday school, the bus come right to our lane on the farm. The bus driver started out about 5:30 in the morning, and he had to go 11 miles to pick up all the kids because he was the furthest out. And I remember we were never, one single time that I ever remember that they canceled school because of a storm. Horses would walk in their tracks in the storm, but somehow or other the horses knew they could feel the tracks, and we always got to school. It started at 9 o'clock in the morning and was over at 4. And when we got home and got older, 6, 7, 8 years old, we started doing the chores along with all the rest, so everybody helped in. We never complained.
But you did chores before you headed off to school too, right? You guys would get up early and feed the chickens, and
we'd get up. We'd be on the way to the barn at 5 o'clock. We worked from 5 to 8. When we come in the door, we ate between the door and coming in and the door going out, and we were out standing waiting for the bus at 8 o'clock. We'd get to school and very in time so that we started at 9 o'clock. We had to be in our seats, and we had school till 4 o'clock.
And then you would come home from school and do more chores?
We done the same chores in the evening as we done in the morning. We usually had from 10 to 14 cows to milk, and we had 6 horses that we had to take care of in the wintertime. Of course, we had the pasture in the summertime, so that helped out as far as the cattle go. But in the wintertime, they had to be housed inside of the barn. They couldn't be left outside. And we always had about 50 chickens for eggs. We always had 2-3 sows and when they give babies, there's usually around 8 each one of them had. And then we had turkeys and we had ducks and we had all our own food. It was my mother would can both sauce, different kinds of sauces, and then we had a 2-acre garden, and she canned all the vegetables. And when we were old enough, 5 or 6 years old, we'd go to the garden and pick weeds for her. And we were always busy. And my dad would go to bed at 9 o'clock at night. Then at 3 o'clock in the morning, he'd get up and start the wood stoves going so that we were warm when we'd get up to go to the barn to do our morning chores and evening chores. And in the wintertime, we had 2 bedrooms that was right above the stove in the living room, and so the heat would go up through a register, and that's the only heat we had. Summertime, we had 3 other bedrooms we'd move to because we could have windows open so it would be cool in the evening when we go to bed. But in the wintertime, we were over that stove for the heat, and we used to open a little lever on the storm windows upstairs, and in the morning the snow would be blowing in through that opening and onto the floor, but we were covered with heavy blankets, so we were plenty warm. We had plenty of food to eat in our lives. We never complained. We used to play weekends with our neighbors. We'd play ball in the summertime, and in the wintertime they would ski and different things, but we never went into any town for anything except our groceries, and most of the groceries we got was spices. And we had 2 people that would come up about every 2 weeks with their old Model T trucks, and they'd sell us all of the spices, and then they'd also sell us nectar, and it was the best you could ever get. You never see it again. They would pour this nectar into a glass and put some sugar in there with water, and it was just like the pop that they have in the bottles today.
Yeah, I know when I took you back home the last time you came out to visit, we went out to Caledonia. We went to visit some grandma and my dad out at the cemetery. We just went out to the cemetery, and then you took me out to where your parents and brothers and sisters are buried in Caledonia. And I remember going out there a few times, but I just really didn't remember how small Caledonia was. And even today, it's probably 30 people in that tiny little town. So I can't even imagine. Was it bigger? Was Caledonia bigger when you were growing up, or is it like you remember now, or?
Well, Caledonia is one of the oldest towns in North Dakota, and there's only one town that filed for village and that was Pembina up by the Canadian border, and that was only 2 months before Caledonia. But Caledonia used to be the county seat for Trail County, and one night the surveyor for the railroad, he owned the railroad, and he come in the middle of the night, and the hotel keeper would not let him take his dogs inside his room. So he had to go to the nearest farm to stay overnight, and he said he would never put a railroad through that town of Caledonia. And he never did. He put one on each side of it, one in the Minnesota side, just about 4 miles from our farm, and then he put one at Hillsborough, which is 11 miles from our farm. But that could easily have been put through Caledonia because it's noted for its history. One of the things that was easy to see was at my grandmother's farm. She had a barn for the cattle, and then she had on the south end of there a big one built on the same level for the hay, and then on the south side of that, she had the old bank that used to stand at Caledonia, and it was robbed one night, and the guy put dynamite on the safe, and he blowed the door off of it, and the door went through the wall, and you could still see how they patched it up, and inside it was wallpaper, and when it used to be a bank. There's such a history with Caledonia that it's hard to go through it and tell you a small part of it. I could talk all night on it.
Yeah, on that bridge, that's pretty old. I mean, we can't use that bridge anymore, but you could tell it was... When was that bridge made? Like late 1800s, maybe?
Well,
they had to build a new bridge to go around Caledonia, but to get from the cemetery to town, that bridge, it just looked really, really, really old. So
the first bridge, Caledonia is the first bridge that was built in North Dakota. It still stands there, but they don't use it because it's condemned.
Yeah. So, let's move into your teenage years. Well, first, can you tell them when you really gave your life to the Lord? You know, when you really started praying to Jesus and really gave your...
I prayed to myself, but I prayed a lot. I remember we had trees around our farm, and we called it the woods. And I went out in the woods, and I laid on a blanket, and when I was reading for the minister, and one of my prayers was that if you let me get through and graduate from reading for the minister, I'll always pray. And off and on through my whole life, I used to pray to myself. But today I pray out loud. I live alone. Nobody can hear me.
Oh, I've heard you when you were here. I've stumbled across you praying at 3:00 in the morning.
Now you tell me.
Well, it's cute. I always wondered how you prayed. I mean, we always prayed in church, and we prayed at dinner every night. We prayed at dinner, and you brought us up in a Christian home where Jesus was always first priority, but I'm just kind of wondering, when you were growing up.
One of the things about praying is right from the time that I was able to walk, my mother would stand at the foot of the stairs and open the door, and she'd ask us to say our prayers, and we'd each finished off saying our prayers, but she stood there and listened until we were done. Never failed.
Yeah. And you always prayed together too, like at dinner time?
Well, that's a Norwegian custom to say prayers out loud at our meals. Of course, when we had the thrashing, they didn't pray then because it was a crashing through. But my mother and my grandmother always prayed for meals, especially for large meals where there was more than one or two people eating.
So do you remember did you ever pray like Jesus, I will serve you all the days of my life? Was there ever a point that you just told the Lord that you loved him and that you would serve him?
I always did. It was mostly to myself when I'd say them, but I even said them in the Navy, but I never done it out loud. I'd say them to myself.
No, yeah. But now, like you said, you live alone and you pray out loud, which is good. It's always good to pray out loud. Well, we're on 27 minutes here, so I want to make these about a half an hour long. We didn't get quite into until you were 18, so I think our next video will go into like your teenage years when you first started dating and then headed off to the Navy. I really like these stories, like how you dated a couple women before you met Grandma. But I think we'll do that on the next video, you guys. I don't want to make them too long, but I work the next couple days, but I said if I wasn't too tired that I would come on and call him after I get everybody in bed. My grandpa's a night owl. He don't go to bed till, 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning sometimes. So I can do them at night. So that'll be our next video. How about that, Grandpa?
That'll be fine.
Yeah, we'll get into your teenage girly stuff. All the girls you dated. How many girlfriends did you have before you met Grandma? Maybe 4?
Well, I didn't really have any girlfriends when I met her. I met her when she was 14 one evening, and there was a bunch of us, and we took her home.
Yeah, but when you started, you didn't start dating her till you got back from the Navy. That's what I'm saying. You met her when she was 14, but you didn't date her until. So we'll get
when we come back from Korea. I was over there a year. When we come back from Korea, we landed in San Diego, and then we went to the canal to the East Coast. My home port was Norfolk, Virginia, and then I got a 30-day leave. That was the second leave I got.
Okay, Grandpa. Well, we're gonna get into that on the next video. Okay?
That'll be fine.
We're at a half an hour, so you just stay on the line. I'm gonna get this video done, and then I'll come back on the phone with you. Okay, guys. So probably in a day or two, we'll do the second video, and then I'm really, really working on another video that I want to share with you guys that you do not want to miss. I'm hoping to get that one done Wednesday or Thursday. And that will be, I want it to be a surprise, so I'm not going to tell you guys quite yet. But anyways, I hope this was a blessing, and we're just going to continue hopefully tomorrow. But Anyways, I love you guys. Jesus loves you, and we'll talk to you guys real soon. Take care and God bless. You want to say goodbye, Grandpa?
Goodbye, everybody.